So we're in Fresno, California, and we just finished repairing a copper line. We took a previous video that showed damage to the 90 up at above the top plate. You can see the scaling on the existing pipe that's rolled all the way down to the point where it stubs out, where the water service comes into the building. It's the water main. So it's scaled all the way up. There's another section of pipe sitting right here. And so we just cut that all out. It was a lot easier to solder down low than it was going to be to solder up there. There's another cavity up on the ladder. But this was the problem right here. So this 90 was weeping, and it was just rolling. Actually, it was in this position. So it was just weeping and rolling down. And to give you a better idea, and it was connected just like that. So it rolled down all the way. So there's water damage. Not as extensive as what we would have thought. You know, there's no mold growing. You could certainly, the block, I mean, it looks like it's going to dry out just fine. I don't think anything's going to go wrong with that, and it's strapped in place. Feel free to replace the block with a new piece of lumber and strap it if you'd like. But we did come down here low and solder on a copper male adapter. It's a male iron pipe adapter, or male threaded adapter to the Wurzbow fitting. The reason we do that, the Wurzbow's brass, and sometimes they're pretty fussy soldering onto copper. So we just opt to get a nice adapter on there, get it soldered clean, let it cool off, and then go ahead, pipe dope, Teflon tape, and get the adapter on there. So we went ahead and originally our scope of work was simply going to be replacing from this little cavity up, but as you can see back in that little area, it'd be a little bit harder to solder up on a ladder, and then over, of course, there's this platform right here. You got to reach back in there, so just a little bit extra pipe, no big deal. So that is in brand new 1.25" Wurzbow, or Uponor. I'm not sure why they changed names. I like Wurzbow. And got that tied back in. It's back in the original hole. We did cut the hole out, so we took some 1.5" by 12" plate straps and screwed those into the wall for structure. I mean, house isn't going to go anywhere, so I wouldn't worry about it. Just be careful when you go to put sheetrock back and whatnot. Don't put a hole through that pipe. It can be repaired, but just, you know, and it's strapped. And the only, you know, you can see the straps overlap each other. We don't leave a gap in between to where all of a sudden you can put a screw hole right through the center where the straps are. So they're overlapped. You can see it's down a little bit from the top, but that's where the 1/2 inch or 5/8 sheetrock up here goes in first, and that'll cover up that gap. Once you put the ceiling back together, it'll cover it up, which will leave your nailing down in these straps area. I always like to mark it. As soon as you put the ceiling in, put a mark on the ceiling where the pipe's at, because you could potentially, if you're pretty aggressive, you can go ahead and use a screw and just keep pushing until it tapped through that metal. Don't do that. So anyways, that's my nit and pick and fuss for that. I'll get off that one. And so 1.25" 90, that's plastic from Uponor, and then a couple of rings there. We came out and tied everything back in, 1.25" by 1.25" by 1T, 1.25" by 1 by 1T, and then of course a 1" 90. These are all existing lines that come from back in the attic. And let's see if I can get you a good picture. Not that you need to see it, but just for fun, you can see what you've got back in there. And so there's your piping. It goes back over. One of them looks like it jumps up and goes up into the attic area. The other two, one takes off back over there, and then this one takes off and heads over to, I don't know, maybe a water heater's over there, maybe not. Anyways, 3 1-inch lines were originally installed, and they had the copper out at an angle as opposed to, it was at an angle, kind of angling over here, as opposed to coming straight out. We did lower this 90 down. The existing 90 was touching roof sheathing. Right now, if you can see, there's quite a bit of gap up top right here. You can see there's some room, about 1.5 inches. The other 90 was up here, and you can see that when they soldered, they burned it right there. That's what the burn mark is from. The reason I like to keep this down so low is if you ever have any roof repairs up there and they decide they want to put a new screw or nail through, and this 90 is sitting up there against the roof sheathing, it could go right through. I've seen it happen. I've seen it go through iron pipe, gas lines with screws. They've just tapped right into it. So we brought it down as low as we safely could. You can see the ring sits right there at the bottom. And so we've dropped it down, which kind of gives it a slope. This pipe is kind of sloping up until it hits this 2x4 member. No big deal. But we did want to keep this down away from the roof sheathing, just a little bit of protection. We stuffed a little bit of felt in there. Feel free, if you would like, to pull that out and fill that full of foam, that expandable foam if you would like. This is just really just a barrier. The pipe is back in the wall and not touching metal, but we don't want to see any, that felt is doubled up, and it kind of just gives you a nice little barrier between straps. Same thing right here. We ended up with a fitting right on top of this framing member, so our regular 2-hole straps wouldn't work. So just a double roll of felt up on top and a short little piece of plumber's tape, and it's not tight at all. The reason being is we don't want to tighten it down there. You know, we want to keep it, you know, loose, but we don't want this pipe hopping up and jumping down. You can see right now it's not going to jump up and down. If it were to do that, if this wasn't strapped, if for any reason it hopped, it would come down and hit the framing member and make a knocking noise, and we don't want that. So it's not strapped tight at all. Like I say, that should be good. That's good. We put 3 additional straps in. 1, 2, 3, all on the 1-inch excuse me, all on the 1-inch lines, just so that you've got no movement there at all. The existing, like I showed you earlier, up in here, you can see there's some straps back a little bit further on the lines. 1, 2, 3, a little bit further back, but these are ours. These are brand new, and just because we don't want this to move around where we tied into our T's, so we got those straps in there to hold the line still. Anyways, we're going to turn the water on, take a look at everything, make sure that nothing's leaking, especially, you know, checking that right down there. With a soldered joint, you always run the risk of getting a little weep, which is what they originally had up there. But we'll turn the water back on, test it out. Outside of that, this installation is done.